Guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I'm actually joined by the legendary Denton J. Tipton. For those who don't know, Denton is a writer and editor. He's probably best known for his work recently. He's been working on Chasing the Dragon, his own series. But besides his work on Chasing the Dragon, he's also worked on Transformers, Gi Joe, Doctor Who, X Files, Star Wars Adventures, Goosebumps, Cobra Kai, and more recently, he's begun working on a new imprint, Magma Comix, under Heavy Metal Comics, where he's edited stories such as The Modern Frankenstein, and he'll also be editing Intrusion, which will be coming out sometime in September. But Denton has very kindly agreed to come on for an interview and let me know him. But Denton, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
It's going to be an absolute pleasure. I imagine it's very sunny over there in California in America while it's wet and cold and dark here in Ireland.
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes. I'm sorry.
It's
But
no problem, They call it the Emerald Isle for a reason, or so I've been told. But
yeah.
yeah, so many different things I want to discuss. Before we get into Chasing the Dragon, let's just do some background
Mhm.
checks. So, how did you get into comics? Were you a fan growing up?
Yeah. Growing up, my dad had a best friend that collected comics, and he had a son that was about my age. So I would, my dad would go visit his friend. I'd go play with his son, and then I would dig through his comics. And I was probably 3 or 4, and I was watching, Super Friends on Saturday morning cartoons and stuff. So got into it at a pretty early age, and kind of became a lifelong passion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, were you a fan of any specific comics like to read, or?
Growing up, I loved Batman was my favorite superhero, so loved those growing up, and I got into Star Wars probably when I was about 4 or 5 as well. Playing with the other kids' little toys and stuff, and then I discovered there was a Star Wars comic, so that kind of married two of my loves. So I'd say Batman and Star Wars would be the
Yeah,
things that really got me into it.
absolutely. And so, what was your first comic book work then?
Oh, my first comic book work, it'd be a small indie press thing.
Ah,
We
yeah.
did like anthology that supported creators. But I like wrote a short story about like a fan interaction that Todd DeZago had, so it's something really small. First, professional would probably be um, goodness, probably a Transformers or a GI Joe story that I wrote, because I edited both for a while, and I did the GI Joe movie adaptation. Was one of the things I did, and got a New York Times bestseller for that, which blows my mind that that even made it. But it looks good on the resume.
I can imagine. So, and winning an award like that's not exactly bad going. But yeah, no, so let's actually discuss your new comic, Chasing the Dragon. And I'm so excited to talk about it. Like we were talking about before, it's on issue 4 currently. For those who don't, for anyone who's watching that doesn't know, can you tell us about Chasing the Dragon and what's it about?
Yeah, kind of the high concept. It's about a dark fantasy world that's been hit by basically a drug epidemic. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
real world mirrors to it, and but it's kind of but there's still a quest element to it, and some strong characters, and some surprising things that happen along the way. To think so, I like to think of it kind of like Witcher meets Breaking Bad, kind of is kind of a good little mix up, or a mashup that kind of describes it. But it's pretty unique, and the art on it is by a painter, Minton 3, and there's not a book out there quite like it. So that was one of our missions, is to do something different with the story and the art, and hope it stands out and resonates with people.
Yeah, and so it's a fun for you to work in this world basically with your own characters and your own people, and you can basically do whatever you want.
Yeah, I've worked a lot on licensed books over the years in editorial capacity and writing, and that is nice in a way because it limits your choices, and you can stay focused a little easier, and you already know the characters because you've read about them. But when you've kind of got an blank page and these characters that you're creating from scratch, it can be a little intimidating, even though you have a lot of freedom. There's just so many ways you could go with it. But if you kind of create a good core of the character and build on that, and then the story will, pretty much take care of itself.
Yeah, and so like you touched on there, do you imagine that there's a bit more freedom working on Chasing the Dragon as opposed to G.I. Joe or Transformers, which you also got to work on? Because these are all kind of predefined characters. Like you can't kill off G.I. Joe, but you can kill off a character from Chasing the Dragon. So do you feel a bit more freedom there?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely much more creative freedom. When you're working with your own story, and like GI Joe and Transformers, or Hasbro properties, and they
Yeah.
want to take care of those, so they get to call the big shots on what happens to their characters. Um, so, but when it's your characters, you can pretty much do anything with them, and I think the fifth issue is going to surprise a lot of people on where these characters end up.
Yeah, and so issue 5 comes out next month, you were saying? Or
Yeah, it should be the end of July.
absolutely. And so what's been your favorite aspect about working on Chasing the Dragon? Has it been the fact that they're your own characters, or is there some aspect that you really enjoy?
I do like the world building that I've gotten to do, and then be able to have these characters and try to build them and get the audience to connect with them and care about them.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think working the collaboration with Minton's been pretty cool because we've worked really closely on it, and um, you know we both hit rough patches during the pandemic while we were working on this, and be able to help each other out and work through things, and it was a good experience to, creatively, and during a difficult time in in history, really.
Yeah.
The pandemic was changed a lot of things for a lot of people, so yeah, it was pretty good and rewarding.
Yeah, and so like considering that you not only are you a writer, you're also an editor. Do you kind of edit your own works as you writing it, as you're writing it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't not do it. And then I didn't want to place the burden of editing this book on someone, because I'm sure I'd be difficult to work with. So I pretty much just edited myself, which is probably a huge mistake. But you know, you always usually need a second pair of eyes. But I just kind of pushed through, and I got it done, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so did you originally get into comics as a writer or an editor?
The first thing I did as amateur was write, and that's something I aspired to. Uh, I was in school for journalism and newspaper years before I became a comic book editor. So yeah, professionally I came in as an editor and then started writing, and as amateur I started writing.
Yeah, and
Um,
and sorry, and yeah, so is there much of a difference between writing and editing? I'd imagine
oh,
there.
oh yeah, 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 absolutely. I think with if you could make the analogy to movies and how they're made, like the screenwriter would be the writer, and then the producer's the editor, and they're usually the ones that handle the money and make sure the trains run on time and hire the people to do the jobs and all that stuff and keep an eye on that. And the artist is pretty much like the director and uh, the actors, because they're drawing all the pictures, the visuals. So they do a lot of the storytelling and the acting with and the expressions and the staging, and like a director would do the shots and stuff like that. So it's so I think editing would kind of be a producer, and a writer would be like a screenwriter would be kind
Yeah.
of a way to look at it.
Yeah, and so as an editor, do you kind of notice differences between writers? Like some writers may write in a different way, and some others may do longer scripts or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, we usually try to keep up on that sort of stuff, and then we know what the writers are good at, what kind of stories they tell best, if they work with solo characters or like team, ensemble casts, what have you. And the same for artists as well. They all have different talents and different weaknesses. So you try to, make them look good and play up to their strengths and minimize the weaknesses.
Yeah, and so Chasing the Dragon is all being published under Magma Comics, is it correct?
Yeah, that Magma Comics. uh,
Sorry, you cut out a little bit. Are you still there, Denton? Oh, yeah, you're back now.
Yep, there we go.
Sorry, yeah, you're back there. But yeah, no, so Magma Comics, for anyone watching that doesn't know, this is something that was like published under Heavy Metal Comics. So basically, what can you tell us about Magma Comics and how it came to be?
Yeah, it's an imprint that I founded at Heavy Metal, and how that came to be was I was pitching Chasing the Dragon to Tim Seeley, who was the editor in chief. Yeah, and I'd known him for years. We'd worked on a Forgotten Realms comic years ago, and reconnected at San Diego Comic Con, not maybe the one prior to the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the last in-person one. So we'd been talking about Chasing the Dragon, and then I was approached to edit and develop Amber Blake, which was a French comic that IDW had republished in English, and they were looking to continue that. So I took on that freelance editing job, and told Tim about it. And I was working with the artist of the French stuff, which is Butch Guys, who's been an artist in comics since the late '70s. He started gosh, I don't know, for Marvel back in the late '70s. He's been doing comics ever since, and he was also doing a Tarna strip for Heavy Metal. So he was already working there, and they liked his work. So they're like, yeah, we'd like to publish this. So Tim kicked me up to the CEO at Heavy Metal, and we had a meeting. I pitched him those things. He loved it. Said, this is enough to start an imprint. Why don't you do that? So I said yes, and Magma was born, and so we've been doing that since.
Yeah, and so has it been kind of a new experience for you, kind of heading a new imprint? Has it been odd for you?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely different. Mostly my comic career was all spent at IDW, and had to build up that company over 10, 12 years that I was there, helped that and saw it grow. So there's such a support system there. And then with Magma, it's pretty much my own thing. So, I'm doing a lot more than just, editing books. So I'm, helping with promotion and publicity, and looking, production, and hiring letterers, and getting think about paper stock and formats, and distribution, and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot more to be to do when it's just mainly one person at an imprint. So it's pretty different, but it's pretty rewarding as well. A lot of work, but it's a lot of fun and freedom, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah, and so do you have a hand, or do like people pitch you? Like Intrusion is a new thing that's coming out in September. Was that pitched to you
Mhm.
by Ethan Sachs, or did you come to him with that, or like how did that even come about?
Yeah, on that one, yeah, Ethan just approached me and asked me if I was taking pitches. I worked on the Star Wars Adventure comics, like you said, so I kind of knew Ethan through the Star Wars networks a little bit, and worked with we've got a lot of similar people that we worked with. Yeah, and when Magma came about, I was looking for pitches, and he hit me up and said I have an idea for a story, and it's a pretty cool story, but he was pitching it specifically to me because I was looking for things that were different and experimental. And this book is a flip book, which it's been done before. In comics, you have one story on one side, you flip it over, and it's a totally new comic with a different story. So it's been done over the years, but and
Oh yeah, there. Sorry, you're back now. But yeah, so Intrusion that comes out in September.
Yes, it comes out, I believe September 22nd, I believe is
You
what
have
we're
so
looking
many
at.
different books; it's hard to keep track of them all. You're like, okay, when does this one come out? When does this one come out? We've also been editing on Modern Frankenstein. Would I be correct in saying so? So
Absolutely.
what's it like being getting to work on that?
Oh, it's been great. Awesome creative team. Paul Cornell is the writer. He co-created it with Emma Vicelli, the artist. And I'd worked with Paul a couple of times on, you mentioned Doctor Who. I used to edit that. We did a one shot on Doctor Who. And then more recently, we did one for Star Trek, the original series, and I always enjoy working with Paul. And he's a great writer. So when I went out on my own, I approached him directly. It's like to work with you again. You got any ideas? And so we kind of resurrected this one, and you know, and created, brought it to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, do you feel like as if there's a bit more responsibility as kind of an editor, like as opposed to a writer, because it's like it's up to you to get all this like together and get it out. So, do you feel a bit more responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're kind of overseeing the whole project, so you've got to make sure the scripts are coming in on time, and then you make sure they're good. You know, edit them. Give them notes on if there's something missing, or something that we could strengthen up. Paul's scripts are pretty solid. So it's mostly localization. Take all the U's out. The words for us Americans can't handle the U's, like in color and such. So, that runs pretty smoothly though. And then Emma, set schedules for her on the art, and she nails every deadline. So they're a great team to work with. And we've got Pippa Boland on colors and Simon Boland on the lettering. So it's a really great team through and through, and they deliver, which is awesome. And
Yeah.
the book's been getting great reviews. So the proof's in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah, and so Modern Frankenstein and Intrusion are those the two Magma comic styles that will be coming out soon?
Yes, Modern Frankenstein's been coming out since April. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
monthly miniseries, and that wraps up in July. And then let's see, Chasing the Dragon will wrap up in July as well. Amber Blake, I mentioned, comes out July 14th, which is Bastille Day, which is fun because um, the writer Jade Lagardère lives in France. She's in Paris, so we'll have some fun promotional opportunities there. And then in September we have the one shot Intrusion by Ethan Sachs and Marco Lorenzana, and we're in September. We're also putting out a new version of um, The Keep, which is like a famous horror novel that we did a graphic novel adaptation to, and we're going to be putting that back into print for the 40th anniversary of the novel. Um, so that's going to be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and so you brought up the keep there. What was it like get to work on that?
Oh, it's awesome. It's there's a novel by it's a novel by F. Paul Wilson, who created like the Repairman Jack character, done several book series. He's a very prolific author, and they did a movie based off of it, directed by Michael Mann back in the 80s,
Oh wow.
which yeah, which Paul famously hates, but so does Michael Mann, so that's okay. Um, he kind of disavows it. It was his early work before he went on to do Miami
Heat
Vice.
and
So
heat.
it's kind of, yeah, so kind of funny, uh, but it's a really cool seminal horror story uh, that Paul actually did the graphic novel adaptation himself with the artist Matthew Dow Smith. Usually an author doesn't touch their own adaptations, but he actually knew comics and had worked in the past on like Warren and comics back in the day. So he knows that art form as well. So he adapted it himself. So
Wow.
um, yeah, so it's pretty cool. And the story's really neat, and it's kind of spawned a lot of imitators. But basically, a group of SS commandos are in the Transylvania area and end up having to spend the night in a keep, and they run into kind of a supernatural character, and the Nazis ended up being picked off one by one. So
Oh,
it's yeah, it's pretty cool story, and really seminal. Um,
hmm.
so excited about that.
Yeah, and when does that come out? Did you say September?
That one comes out in September as well. I believe the 14th. Yeah, I believe it's the 14th, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, is there anywhere people can check out Magma Comics, or like his website around?
Yeah, we're at Magma Comics, on all the socials with the X. So Magma Comics with an X, and you keep up with their news there. We're pretty active now, so it's been
Yeah.
fun interacting with the people.
Everyone go check that out. There'll be a link in the description. But actually, moving on, you also got you brought up there. You got to work on Star Wars Adventures. So were you a
Hmm.
Star Wars fan growing up, like you said? You like so you were a Star Wars fan?
Oh yeah, huge. Since like 1980. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like 4 years old, and all the hype for Empire Strikes Back was coming out,
Oh
and
yes.
all the older kids in the neighborhood were playing with the toys. So I ended up gravitating toward that, and then I found the comic as well, which I was already into comics. So yeah, so Star Wars kind of became my passion as a kid. I was into other things. Like I said, Batman would probably be right there with Star Wars. But it was really cool to be able to work on those comics and contribute to that and kind of pay it forward, because I loved those comics as a kid. So I got to make you know kid kids comics, Star Wars comics specifically geared towards kids. So it was a lot of fun to get to play with those characters and connect with the younger audience.
Yeah. Favorite. So do you have a favorite Star Wars character? It's an impossible question, but
It's been different as I grew through fandom. It would change.
yeah.
I would say everyone was a Han fan because he was the cool guy, but always gravitated toward Luke because I always liked that uh, or chosen one kind of trope. So I always gravitated toward Luke, but now I've kind of come around to where I I think my favorite character is Obi-Wan. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, so I went, which obviously didn't appeal to me as a kid. Is
Yeah.
Alec Guinness. He's like 1,000-year-old man. It's like nothing appealing about that character to a kid. But since they've added, they did the Clone Wars and the prequels, even some of that's can be spotty, but you can't fault McGregor's performance. He's awesome. So looking forward to that Obi-Wan series when
Oh
that
yes,
ever
that's
comes
gonna be
out.
great. Yeah, and so like getting to work on Star Wars Adventures is a bit surreal to like see your name in a Star Wars book, or like is it for any other comic like holding a name and seeing your name on it? Does that kind of freak you out?
Oh yeah. It is very weird and surreal. Growing up as a kid, reading those things and loving them, and then being able to make them. It's just yeah, pretty wild. And then you do it for so long and you kind of get jaded to it after a while as well, because it
Yeah,
just kind of becomes the new normal, and then can be a slog sometimes. So the sausage factory and all that.
yeah, yeah.
So but yeah, no, it's pretty cool to be able to see your name in a book like that. Like Spider-Man was another big character when I was a kid, and I ended up getting to edit some of the Marvel kids comics,
Oh wow.
including the Spider-Man one. So that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and so of course, like You guys work on Star Wars Adventures, which is a comic book series based on like the movies, and so you're going to be see some of my brilliant segue
Mhm.
skills. You also got to work on Cobra Kai, which was kind of like a sequel or a prequel, I suppose you could say, to the Cobra Kai, or sort of for the Karate Kid film. So I'd like to get to work on that Cobra Kai miniseries.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Because we had been talking about Cobra Kai, internally at IDW for a while, and as we got the license, and I ended up wanting to do a pitch. I wanted to, been wanting to do some writing. I hadn't gotten to do much, focusing a lot, all on the editing stuff. And so I, put together a pitch for Tom Waltz and um, like three different ideas, and they sent them off to Sony, who workshopped them with the showrunners of Cobra Kai, and they gravitated toward one of them. Which was great. And that turned out to be basically doing the Karate Kid movie from Johnny's point of view. So it's kind of a prequel to Cobra Kai, but we're using the storyline from Karate Kid, the original movie. So we got to play with that and show
Yeah.
scenes from that you did get to see. We pulled some of the cut scenes from the original movie and
Oh
used
wow.
those. So I got to kind of do a remix of it and bring in a lot of cool elements and work with a couple of the guys that wrote on the show who would read the scripts and give us notes and say, oh, we're going to do this in season 2, so you can change this to tie in. So it was really cool to be able to work with them like that and bounce ideas and make things tie in
Yeah.
tightly with the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, were you a fan of the Karate Kid films, or?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I was, probably 8 or 9 when the first one came out, so I was the perfect age, and yeah, definitely loved those films. I remember I saw The Karate Kid for the first time at the YMCA. It's like a youth center that they have here in the States, and uh, every at that age, like all the boys are like, all they think of that is that scene after the Halloween uh, dance where the guys are in the skeleton suits and
Oh
chasing
yeah.
Daniel on the bikes. That's the thing that you kind of gravitate when you're at age. So it's like real visceral memory for me. Yeah, and of course watched all the sequels and such. So
Yeah, and
it was a thrill to be able to work on that.
yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of fun for you to write this from Johnny's perspective and kind of like putting a whole new spin on it.
Yeah, yeah, it really was because I really loved the writing on the Cobra Kai show, and it really resonated with a lot of people that felt were their best years, and it was something that a lot of people are struggling with, and so it was really done smartly, and so it was really cool to be able to kind of riff on that and kind of bring that to the 80s and make Johnny more sympathetic of a character, so you kind of see like why he did the things that he did.
Yeah.
Everyone's a hero in their own story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So played that up and showed some of the things that he went through, and so it's pretty cool to do.
Yeah, and so you got to do quite a bit of work on the Transformers. So what was that like, getting to work on Transformers?
Oh wow, yeah, that was it's been a long time now. That was one of
Really?
my
Yeah.
first assignments. Yeah, I came to IDW, gosh, it's been 13 years now, and that was
Wow.
my first assignment. So I came in right as All Hell Megatron had started with Shane McCarthy and Guido Guidi, and then we were doing the movie comics. We were doing between movie 1 and 2 of the Michael Bay films. So uh, it was really exciting times for Transformers, and got to work with a lot of really cool people that I'm still friends with now. Yeah,
Wow.
even that Nick Roach guy, I still talk with
Oh
him.
yes. Friend of the channel. Everyone in Ireland knows
I
each other.
bet.
So yeah. Oh yeah, Nick. You know,
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought I would, name drop Nick. I knew you'd get a good reaction with your crowd, your
he
audience.
lives down the road.
But no, does he now? Yeah,
Nah, I mean, we all just live in one big estate. That's basically Ireland.
exactly,
It's one big
exactly. Where's he
house.
at? And is he in Derry? I think I can't remember, but yeah, I love Nick. He's a great guy. Uh, you know, been through a lot of robot wars with that guy.
Oh, of course, as everyone does. But besides
Mhm,
Transformers, you got to do. You touched on doing Transformers movie adaptation. You also got to do the
mhm.
GI Joe movie adaptation, which scored you a New York Times bestseller. I suppose I'd like to get to do the
Yeah,
GI Joe movie adaptation.
that one was kind of wild because that one was one of the first projects I'd written, professionally in comics, and and it was an adaptation of a
Oh yeah.
screenplay, and the biggest, because we'd have to come out, before the movie or at least close to the movie time, so we got to work on, got to see what was going to happen, and ahead of time, so we got to work on that, and you know, um, it, I really enjoyed getting to figure out what works in film and what works in comics and
Yeah.
adapt it in that way, because certain things don't play in comics because you got a static picture and it's harder to do certain things in storytelling. So I got to play with that and kind of make it its own to comics. I got to move some scenes around, which was fun, to get some different transitions and see how that kind of changes the pace of things. So yeah, it was kind of really cool exercise in storytelling and knowing the difference in what works in one and not in the other, and also like the screenplay seemed pretty cool, like, oh, this could be a pretty good movie, and then you watch the movie and it's like, oh, that wasn't a very good movie. uh, so it's like how things can change, and how like with most things, it lies in the execution.
Yeah.
um, so it taught me a lot of things, and pretty interesting and cool experience.
Yeah. And so, do you have a preference over being a writer or editor, or do you like doing both equally?
Wow. They scratch different itches, I think.
Yeah.
I That's a tough question, and I haven't gotten to write as much as I want to, so I'd probably be biased and
Yeah.
say would should be spending more time writing, but I'm good at editing and I enjoy it as well. And I like helping, creators refine their vision and be able to express it better, and you know, serve that creative vision and help guide them. So I like seeing other people succeed as well. So it's, yeah, it's a tough question, but
Yeah.
I probably want to write more. I think that would probably be the quick answer.
Yeah, definitely. And so you also got to do quite a bit of work on the Goosebumps title for a few stories. So what was it like to get to work for on Goosebumps?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I got to edit, a series. I was overseeing that, and then I had a story idea that I developed with a friend of mine, Matthew Dow Smith, who did
Yeah,
the
yeah.
art for the Keep, and we come up with an idea and pitched that to Scholastic, and they ended up liking the idea. So I got to write a Goosebumps miniseries as well, which was a tremendous lot of fun. That getting to come up with ideas that fit within the Goosebumps bumps aesthetic. It's hard, but it's not too edgy, and there's some tongue-in-cheekness to it, and you got to have like a have a twist, and make it so it was a cool writing challenge, and obviously Goosebumps is huge, so it's fun to be part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And so coming off Goosebumps, you got to do a little bit of work in X Files. So it was like get work in the X Files.
Oh man, yeah, I worked for on X-Files, oh gosh, probably from 2012 until they come out with the god awful reboot show. Um, it kind of killed all interest for the comic, but the season 10 that we did was a lot of fun because we got to go work with Chris Carter, who created the series, and um, you know, worked with him and Joe Harris, who wrote that series. Um, it was really cool to get to work directly with the creator, and we had breakfast a couple times at Comic Cons and got to do panels. So got to know him a little bit, which was pretty cool. And he was very Chris was very helpful and gracious with it. So that was a lot of fun. And we got to tell a really fun, cool story. We had Michael Walsh, who did the first story arc, and then he went off to work for Marvel, and the rest was history. So now he's a big deal. So that was pretty cool thing that came out of X Files, and got to start working with like Francesco Francavilla and Jordi Belair, and a lot of cool creators like that. So it was really, really awesome experience. It would probably be hard to top being in a San Diego Comic Con panel, sitting next to Gillian Anderson, Scully herself, and
Wow.
talking to a room full of hundreds and hundreds of X Files fans, and um, it was pretty electrifying. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, and so was the comic going on at the same time as the TV show, or was it afterwards?
Well, it was before the TV show came back. We kind of did our own continuation of the TV show, and then they did a revival, they called it, where they brought Duchovny and Anderson back to reprise the roles of Scully and Mulder, and um, yeah, so we basically like that kind of scuttled everything that we had done and said, oh, this continuation no longer counts, and then we have to do a new a new comic based on the new continuity. So that kind of was a pisser, but
Yeah.
then the TV show didn't do great, so no one wanted the comic anymore. So that kind of just went away.
Yeah, and so like, did you feel like a certain sense of responsibility because it's like these aren't your own characters. You have to kind of write these characters as David Duchovny would deliver a line. So was that kind of tough?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You would definitely do that. Like Joe got really good at that because Joe Harris wrote the series for a number of years, so he got really good at capturing the voices of the characters. And yeah, and as an editor, that's definitely one of your main duties, is to make sure the original vision is kind of intact, and the characters act and sound like the characters, and you know uh, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the last comic I want to touch on, you also got to do quite a little bit of work on Doctor Who. It was like during the for the
Mhm.
10th Doctor, was it David Tennant? But yeah, it was like the
Yeah,
Doctor Who.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we. I think I started with Tennant, and then Matt Smith is where we ended.
Oh
So
yeah,
I got to bridge a couple of the Doctor Who the doctors, which was, yeah, really, really cool. The only thing really I didn't like about switching doctors is we had to focus on the new doctor, so we couldn't like do any like stories with the past doctors. It all had to be like Matt Smith doctor at that time, because
yeah.
he's the new doctor. You want to establish him and get the fans used to him and excited about that incarnation. So that was the only bummer about it. But I got to work with a lot of cool creators, and worked with a lot of cool people at BBC, like Gary Russell. Is awesome. He was basically like the main licensing person at BBC when I was working there. So he was like, editing our, liaison with, the showrunner. It was Davies at the time, and then later Moffat. So it was cool working with those guys. And of course, I grew on Tom Baker. That was my
Yeah.
doctor when I was growing up. We got we got him on the PBS over here in the States. So that kind of, and then, the comic was out, so it had cool Dave Gibbons art in it. So,
Oh yeah.
so that was cool too. And then got to work with Dave. We did a reprint of all his Doctor Who stories. Um, so I got to work with him a little bit on that, and he was a real gent. It was really cool working with him.
Yeah, and so is Tom Baker your favorite Doctor?
Probably just out of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Getting to know, the third Doctor, I really like that version of the
Oh,
Doctor.
John Pertwee, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little more, 60s action oriented kind of take on it. So that was kind of interesting. And, but I don't know, I really came around to liking the Matt Smith incarnation as well a lot. Didn't get much time with Tennant, but like the I liked I think I liked Amy and Rory as companions,
Yeah.
like a parents, and they had a cool story, and I liked what Moffat had done with them. So I kind of around to liking Matt Smith a lot.
Yeah. Favorite Doctor Who villain? Do you have one?
Oh man,
Asking the hard hitting questions here, of course.
yeah, I know. Probably the Cybermen are so fun and kitschy. I really like them a lot. Uh, so maybe them. The Ice Warriors are fun too. Um, you know, but yeah,
There's so
I
many different
I
ones.
probably,
We could be here.
yeah. There's so many cool ones. Yeah. And the Master's always
The
great.
Master, my personal favorite. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
So, yeah.
but yeah, so my last three questions coming off. Have you noticed improvement as like a writer and an editor? Like, do you look back at some of your earlier work and say, "Oh, I should have done this," or "Oh, I could have done this"?
Oh, every time, and usually not long after, you always will look at your past work and you're like, oh, I could have done this better. Oh, I goofed up there, and you're always, it's always be good. It's always good to kind of look at what you're doing and being able to learn from it and not carry on with the same mistakes. So uh, yeah, I've definitely from when I started. I've boneheaded things over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, my second last question: if you could do a dream comic with any comic book character in the whole vast world, who would it be? Who's that one character you'd love to work on?
Thundar the Barbarian. It is a short-lived cartoon that
That's very
came.
out of left wing.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like you'd never heard of it because it was just like a cartoon that came out in like 1980 and 81. Um, and it was the character designs were done by Alex Toth, who's like a famous comic artist that designed like Space Ghost and
Oh, yeah.
Herculoids and like a lot of the Hanna-Barbera like action kind of characters. And then Jack Kirby designed the villains for the cartoon. And then there were a lot of writers like Steve Gerber, who did Howard the Duck back in the day, and Buzz Dixon and Mark Evanier, who was Kirby's assistant. He also writes Groove the Wanderer by Sergio Aragonis. But, so there's a lot of comic book people that worked on that cartoon. And it, I loved it as a kid because it was basically Conan the Barbarian and Star Wars mashed up.
Yeah,
So it
that's
was
awesome.
like post-apocalyptic, but sword and sorcery. So there's like, weird sci-fi stuff, but then also supernatural stuff. And there's this big barbarian dude with a lightsaber running around with a gorilla and a hot princess. And it's like, this is pretty cool. But there hasn't been much done with it since, and I've tried to get the rights multiple times to the license to be able to do it, and never have been able to accomplish it. So
Magma Comics
that's
must
my
be on the phone trying to get it. You know,
oh man, constantly
that's
for
such a good
years I've
one.
been asked. Yeah, I've been asked that question for years, and it's always been that answer, and it still eludes me. So one day, I hope to make my Thunder comic.
It's every man's dream. It's only a matter of time. But my
Right?
Yeah, my last and final question, because you've been so kind. If anyone was looking to get into comics, what advice would you have for them?
Um, just start making your comics. You know, you don't need to wait on a publisher to let you in. You can start making comics right now and slap it up on the web, and you're a comic creator. So, you know, don't wait for someone to tell you yes. You know, just go ahead and do it and make it and put it out there, and you know, and continue to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we could end it on a better note. Denton, thank you so much for coming on. Before we finish up, are you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on all those. Just Denton Tipton.
Denton, Tipton. Yeah, and
All.
is there anything you'd like to
Mhm.
promote? Chasing the Dragon issue 4 has come out. Everyone make sure to go pick that up. Anything you'd like to promote?
No, I think, you know, we covered pretty much everything that I'm doing with Magma and what's coming up. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I don't think you get on a better note. Thank you all so much for watching. Go check out Denton's work. I'll see you on next video. Stay safe, and if possible, please make sure to donate to National Deaf Children's Society. There'll be a link for that down in the description. Denton, I'll toss you a little bit here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.